What is up, guys? How you doing out there in YouTube land, huh? How's everything by you? Well, I'm just happy to see that you're here. I want to thank you for tuning in. On today's video, I'm going to be talking about my Suzuki DRZ 400 SM. That's right. We've done a few videos on this bike before, but today is kind of a special one. It's a little different than the videos before. I want to pull over here in a second, and I want to give you guys a good look at this bike that I'm talking about. Just in case you haven't seen any of my other videos, you don't know what I'm talking about yet. Let's find a nice spot. Tuck down this side road quick. Alright guys, what is up? What's better than a dead end? Huh? Let's give you a quick little look at this bike. Alright guys, again, 2015 DRZ 400 SM or Supermoto. That's what she looks like. And I want to just start off this video by just emphasizing just how much I absolutely love this bike. I love it. Absolutely love it. Never knew just how awesome and exciting a Supermoto could be till I got this bike. Super happy with my decision to purchase it. Obviously, it's a 2015 and I got it used. I got it with about 2,000 miles on it. The guy had it in great shape, all stock. Never did any mods to it, never messed with the engine, so I was super happy with it. Loving it so far. And today's video is sponsored by, no, I'm just kidding. I have like 18 subscribers. I don't have any sponsors. Sorry. I find it funny. Anyway, today's video is all about the 8 or maybe 9, I don't know, 8 or 9 things that I hate about my DRZ. That's right. Now, I'll probably do another video about things I love about it, but again guys, I want to preface this by saying, all around, in general speaking, I love this bike. I totally love it. It was a great purchase. So if you're thinking about getting one, this video is not to talk you out of getting it. It's just to point out to you some of the downfalls of said bike. And the first one I want to start out with is this, right down here. You see this? This black thing? That's the gas tank. Well, this stock gas tank, it holds 2 gallons of gas. Alright? Not much. Now, don't get me wrong, motorcycles get much better gas mileage than cars do. So, it's not terrible. But I would definitely rather it be much bigger. And they did solve this problem in the aftermarket. Don't get me wrong, it's not like you're stuck with this tank forever if you don't want it. But let's just imagine this scenario for a second. This bike is made, especially if you get the S model, I think it is, not the Supermoto. It's designed to go on and off-road. So let's say you're having a great day off-road, wailing through the woods, hitting some jumps with your buddies, and then all of a sudden start sputtering out. You're in the middle of nowhere. Now yes, there's a reserve on the Petcock. You can hit the reserve. It is a very short reserve, I gotta say, on this tank. I don't know exactly how many miles it gets you, but it's not a lot. So if you're deep in the woods, that reserve is not going to be enough to get you out. So I definitely suggest either upgrading your gas tank or carrying a spare fuel bottle with you that would be enough to get you out of the woods if you did happen to get stuck there. But I think the aftermarket one, I think there's one that gives you like the Acerbis or whatever, gives you like 4 gallons of gas. That's much better. So that brings me to the second thing, number two, that I hate about the DRZ. And that is the fact that, hey, I mean, it's 2020 now, but this was 2015. By 2015, you can't give me a gas gauge on this bike? I mean, really? That's right. The second thing I hate about this bike is that within this display here, this panel, there is no gas gauge. So, you have no idea when you're running low on gas. So, well, what do you do? Well, for me, what I do is each and every time I fill up the tank as best as I can all the way to the top, I reset my trip A, okay, to 0. And it's always going to be a little bit different, but I know around like 90 miles, 90 to 100 miles, I need to start looking for a gas station if I don't want to get stuck and put it on reserve. And like I said, it's going to be a little different for everybody. It depends if you're doing around town traveling, if you're doing like some highway miles, if you're really ripping on it, if you're taking it easy, you got a heavy throttle hand, a light throttle hand, or maybe you just warm up your bike a lot or leave it idling a lot of times. And so then the miles really aren't going to do you any good if you leave your bike just sitting and running a lot, because you're going to be burning fuel and then still thinking, oh, I've only got 60 miles. How come it's running out of gas? Well, it's a real bummer. And I gotta say, right now, I own 2 motorcycles because I just recently sold my Honda CB500F. If you didn't see that video, check it out. But I loved that bike too, but you'll see the reasons why I sold it in the video. But the 2 bikes that I do own, this and my 2006 Sportster 883, neither one of them has a gas gauge. And I find that so annoying because I'm a pretty forgetful person. So even when I reset the trip, I don't always remember to look at it. So right now I'll get 17 miles. So I'm pretty good for today. I can pretty much cruise around for a long time today and not have to worry about it. But what ends up happening is one of these times I back this thing out of the garage and I look and I go, uh-oh, 93. And the first stop I gotta go is to the gas station. That kind of stinks. So all that, you know, is it a deal breaker? Well, no, obviously none of these things are actually deal breakers. I still love the bike, 100% love it. I'm sure there's probably some way to add an aftermarket fuel gauge on this. How? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. It's not that important to me, but I really do wish there was one there. So that brings me to the third thing on my list that I hate about this bike. And that is that it's not fuel injected. Yeah, this bike is still carbureted. They've been making it this way for almost like 20 years, pretty well unchanged, and it's still carbureted. I mean, 2015 this bike was made. It's 2020 now, and the 2020 models are still carbureted. Suzuki, what is going on? Now I've heard that it's because this bike is kind of grandfathered in, since nothing has changed on it. They don't have to meet certain emission requirements because they haven't redesigned it at all. So they don't have to meet like new codes, I guess. I don't really know what the reason is. I just know that it should be fuel injected by now. I mean, it's ridiculous. And there's a lot of advantages to fuel injection. Now I like carburetors because you can work on them easier. But fuel injected is a lot better when you want to try to add some stuff onto this, like an exhaust or something, or some cams, an intake, or new, a high flow filter or something, and then you want to be able to tune it. It's a lot easier to get a tuner. It costs more, but easier to tune a fuel injected bike. when you just get into the ECU, and then you can program it to exactly fine-tune it how you want. It's hard to fine-tune with, you know, different needles and jets and stuff like that, and messing around with it and dialing in carburetors. I don't know. It's just not that much fun to me. And that brings me to number 4. What is number 4 on my list of things that I hate? Well, it kind of goes right along with that fact that this is still carbureted. Not only has that not changed in 20 years, really nothing has changed on this bike in 20 years. You know, a few little tiny things here and there, but for the most part, this bike has remained the same, unchanged in design for 20 years. And it looks it. You know, don't get me wrong, some people think it's really ugly. I don't think it's as ugly as some people claim it to be. But you could tell it's outdated, whether you think it's ugly or not, you know, because I look back at some of the 80s dirt bikes, and I actually think they look really cool. But I could tell they're an 80s dirt bike. And you know, when you look at this bike, you could tell that it has not been updated or redesigned in a long time. You might even mistake it if it was like, you know, dirty and scratched up and you couldn't tell if it was like a new bike. You might actually be fooled into thinking it's much older than it is. When you put this up to some of the dual sports that are out there on the market now, from guys like KTM, even Yamaha, Honda, any of those, Husqvarna, I mean, you're going to notice a big difference in design and styling. This thing has been stuck in the past for too long. You know, there is some advantages to that too, like parts not changing and being more readily available since things haven't changed, but for the most part, I think it needs a facelift. I think it's well overdue for a facelift. So, number 5. Number 5 was something that I had heard about, but didn't really find out about until I actually got the bike and started riding it around. And I realized that anything more than a quick jaunt around the neighborhood and the stock seat, it was just gonna hurt. I mean, it hurts. I don't know what to say. It's too thin, it's too hard, and it just, no matter what, it's not comfortable. I felt like no matter what I did, and I get it, I'm like a bigger guy, I'm 200 pounds, you know, but I felt like no matter what I did, one butt cheek was sliding off one side of the seat or the other. I readjust and I felt like the other butt cheek was sliding off the other side of the seat. No matter what I did, I just couldn't find a comfortable spot on that seat. And so one of the best investments I made in this bike was getting a seat concept seat. And I'm going to do a whole video just on that to show you guys, because it's worthy of its own video, honestly. It's was a super great upgrade. I love it. But definitely hated the stock seat. Stock seat, not for me. Now, if some of you out there disagree, hey, that's cool. You know, leave a comment in the comments. Let me know how many miles you've done straight or how many hours you've ridden straight on that stock seat. I'd love to hear it. Maybe I'm just a complainer. Maybe I'm just a baby. I don't know. But I didn't like it at all. And again, after 20 years of people sitting on that and complaining about it, you think Suzuki would have done something about it. Now, this next thing is going to require me, I'm going to pull over because I want to actually show you. The next thing that I want to complain about, the next thing that I hate about this bike, and I just thought, like, how could this be possible, is that one of the first things that was recommended to me to do on this bike after watching, because, you know, if you're going to buy one of these bikes, if you're like me, what do? You go out, you watch a bunch of YouTube videos about what other people think about it, what other people who have it have done to it, etc., 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 etc. And one of the things that became obvious was that you have to get these guards for the engine cases. All right, this one on this side, I got mine from Thumper Talk. There's other places you can get them, on Amazon, eBay, whatever. This one has the Thumper Talk logo on it. This case, I don't even like the design of these things, honestly. They should have been made to bolt on, in my opinion, but these are actually glued on, which, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, don't love the design of that. But point is, I hate that this motorcycle right out of the gate, right out of the showroom floor, basically needs this. And why do I say that? Well, I don't know if I can find the video again to link it down below. But one of the videos I saw was a guy who actually bought this bike, drove it home. I don't know how many miles he put on it. I think it was like under 20 miles. Went in his garage, went to put the kickstand down and lean on the kickstand. The kickstand wasn't down right. The bike fell over on its side, and the shifter peg, as if you see the back of it, it's got a sharp edge. The shifter peg actually went through the engine case, and his oil spilled out all over the floor of his garage. Brand new bike, less than 20 miles on it. That has got to really, that's a bad day. That's a bad day, you know. So it seems like to me, if you're going to design a bike that's meant to go on-road and off-road, it should be a little tougher than that. Now that's just my opinion. I don't know, you guys might disagree. From what I understand, these are very thin magnesium cases on this bike. Now I guess it was done to keep the overall weight of the vehicle down, but to me, durability is just as important as lightweight on something like this. You're going to be taking this thing out in the middle of the woods. It falls over. I mean, there's a good chance that this thing is going to fall over. I'm trying to figure out why that guy's flashing his lights at me. Do I not have a headlight on? I do. Don't know. Anyway. So yeah, this thing is designed to be ridden through the woods. What's the chances that you're not going to drop this thing over? And if you do, what's the chances that that thing's going to poke a hole in the side of your engine case and leave you stranded out in the middle of the woods? So to me, I thought it was just kind of dumb that one of the first things you need to do is reinforce the engine cases of this bike. Now I get it. A skid plate and stuff to toughen up the durability of a bike, but to literally have to glue pieces of metal onto the engine case in order to make them strong enough to handle a drop, and a drop from putting it on its kickstand. You're not even talking about, like, you know, the guy was going 30 miles an hour and laid it over. No, this guy thought he was putting it on the kickstand, and it fell over and literally popped a hole in the engine case. I don't know. To me, that says something about the design, and I think that's definitely a flaw. But then again, I don't know a lot about building motorcycles, so I could be wrong. That's one of my beefs with it. Again, not a deal breaker, obviously. I glued the cases on and kept going, because again, I love this bike. This bike has so many miles per gallon, it's ridiculous. You can't get on this bike, I mean, if you enjoy riding motorcycles, and start riding around and not have a smile on your face. That's just the kind of bike this is. I think it's probably the kind of bike any supermoto is, in my opinion. But I didn't find that out till I got this bike, how great supermotos were. So, what number was that? I think that was number 6. Which brings me to number 7. The 7th thing, got my little cheat sheet here, that I hate about this bike. And mostly, I'll notice this on my commutes to work. But that is the 5-speed gearbox. Yeah, that's right. Suzuki, when you finally do upgrade this thing, please, let's give this thing a 6th gear. It certainly needs it. You get on the Long Island Expressway. I'm from New York, from Long Island, so I mean, that's one of our biggest highways out here. But you get on the expressway in the morning and you're going and you're just getting up to speed with the other traffic, and you start to try to give it a little more throttle, and you reach for another gear, and oh shoot, I'm already in 5th gear. Yeah, I hate that about this. And again, this is another thing that my other bike, my Harley Sportster 883, shares in design with this motorcycle, and I hate it on both of them. I would love each of them to have a 6-speed gearbox. I had it on the CB500F, and it was awesome having that extra gear. It really was. I mean, you get this thing in 5th and you're winding it out, and you just reach for it. You want there to be one more gear, and unfortunately, there's not. Well, that was number 7, which brings me to number 8, and I think, at least for now, my final complaint, the final thing that I hate about this DRZ, and that is the stock headlight, which could kind of be grouped right in with that whole hasn't been changed in design in 20 years or whatever. But this thing just had your old square 1980s halogen bulb up front, and I mean, you know what the front of a DRZ looks like. I'll put it up on the screen right here in case you don't. I mean, you'll just look at that thing, it screams 1980. It might even scream 1975. But come on, Suzuki, how much would it cost to put a different kind of headlight in there and just design a new plastic fairing to put over that? Something a little more like a KTM is putting out now, or Husqvarna, even Honda. They got a little bit of a V at the top. They got, you know, it's not just a straight square. But not only is it ugly in the way it looks, try riding this thing at night with that headlight, and you're not going to be going very fast because you're not going to be able to see very far ahead of you. The lighting stinks. I did upgrade to an LED bulb that I got on Amazon, and much happier with it. It definitely lights up the road a lot better, and it even looks cooler, even though it doesn't change the shape. It's still square, or rectangle rather, but it just has a more modern look to it. You could tell it's an LED. It doesn't look like an old square halogen bulb off a 1980s dirt bike. But anyway, guys, those are the 8 things that I hate about the DRZ. What I would really love is to hear down in the comments below if any of you guys have a DRZ, or did have a DRZ, or even you want a DRZ and you happen to know something else that you hate about it. I would love for you guys to share down in the comments something you hate about the DRZ. And I would also like to hear from those who are looking to get a DRZ. If you have any questions, guys, feel free to leave them down in the comments. If there's anything I could do to help you out to make a better decision on buying this bike or not buying this bike, I'd love to be able to provide that information for you. Again, I want to end this video in the same way that I started it, and that's by telling you that, guys, I absolutely love this bike. I think it's awesome. I haven't really given it too much of a try on dirt yet, but just cruising around the streets, ripping around my town on this thing, it's so much fun. The fun factor on this bike is huge. And yeah, it's got some things that could use some work, but there's almost none of those things on my list that can't be addressed in the aftermarket. Almost every one of those things can be corrected with an aftermarket part, or it's really not that big of a deal and you could live with it anyway. So, if you guys are thinking about getting this bike, I highly recommend it. Yes, it hasn't been changed in 20 years, but sometimes, guys, when you got it right, you don't need to change it. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for coming along on this ride with me. I want to thank you for listening to me. And guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Till then, God bless.